Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inventive Marketing Club number 7. Wow, we're most of the way through the year, and it's really hot. I'm going to say, first of all, it's quite cool in here because I have the blinds down and I've had the doors open, but just for you guys, I've quietened all that down and shut it all up. However, I have got the fan going, so if you can hear a roaring sound over the audio, let me know and I'll turn it off. Know that I will suffer from the heat, but I do it for you. So yeah, just let me know in the notes. Anyway, on today's Marketing Club, what we're going to be talking about is Google Analytics. Some of the content is actually taken from a few presentations I've run recently, so they've gone down very well. So hopefully you'll like that too. And we'll be looking at how people find your site, tracking sales, and setting up a dashboard. So let's get straight into it. Oh, actually, before we do, let me give an intro to the club for people who are new. Basically, the club is a webinar where we meet every month, usually every fourth Tuesday of the month. And really, we're looking to help people just bring back their marketing mojo. I think a lot of people lose heart with marketing. Certainly, I can feel like that from time to time, and talking about it with other people can be really helpful. Helping people overcome a lot of technical hurdles. Sometimes we've just got, a lot of people I come across really just often get stuck with marketing because they've come across something where they're not quite sure how to proceed. Maybe they don't know what the best technical route is. So we look at some of those as well. And just being part of community. You know, we usually have depending on who's on, we have a good chat and ask some good questions. So can everyone hear me? Whoever's online, if you just give me a thumbs up or just make a note in the chat just to let me know that everything is coming through okay. Hi, Nikki. Hope you're nice and cool up there. Okay, so moving on. So what to expect in this particular one? So we're looking at really how people get through to your site, where they find you from. You know, is the activity you're doing on social media working? Which social media platforms are working well for you? In terms of tracking conversions, understanding what conversion is and how you can understand where people come from, and then which ones actually will buy from you or visit certain pages that you want them to visit. And then we're also looking at segmenting data, which is quite fun. Can get quite interesting, really, where you can look at your data and split it up into certain segments, such as only looking at the blog pages that people who purchase something on your site look at. And then we're going to look at setting up a dashboard and a monthly report, something to keep you coming back to your stats on a regular basis. Nikki says she has a fan too. Yes, I think we all need them in this weather. Oh, and hello, Felicity. Nice of you to join us. Thank you. So what is Google Analytics? Well, there are lots of statistics package out there, but I'm just going to focus on Google Analytics. One, because it's made by Google, it's prevalent, it's free, and it's quite detailed. We're not going to dive into all that detail, but it's got a lot of detail if you want it. So there's a lot of useful information there. It's a free tool to track people who visit your website. Now, it is like a security camera in a shop, but I don't think it's quite as creepy, although I'm sure Google aren't providing this service for our benefit. They're going to be collecting a lot of data off the back of this. And while we won't be diving into them, you do need to make sure that you're not giving Google any data that really contains personal information where you can avoid it, such as like an IP address. And you need to make sure when that has been added to your website that you aren't giving that IP address away, because that's considered personal information and maybe it's definitely against GDPR regulations. So if you, I'm not going to go into how you install Google Analytics. If you don't have Google Analytics installed and you're listening to this, just get in touch, hello@ratherinventive.com, and we'll set up a call and we'll get it sorted for you. It takes about between 10 and 15 minutes. It's something that's straightforward to do. It's just not worth going through it in this detail here. This really is for people who've got it installed and are collecting data already. So if you don't have Google Analytics installed, let me know, hello@ratherinventive.com, and we'll get you sorted. Okay, so a few questions that I think would be worth looking at really in terms of our audience here today. So I want to know who uses Google Analytics already. And if you don't know, why not? Are there any other statistics packages you're using? I know there's a lot of stats programs built directly into, say, Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, any of these website builders. They all have stats packages built in, but often they work with Google Analytics as well. what do you need to improve on the site? What are you looking at tracking so you can improve it, and why? I think that's particularly interesting because there are lots of numbers available that we can monitor on Google Analytics, but why are we looking at them? And where do you need your site to improve? So really, any questions like that, anything that crops up, just ask them as they go along, and when I come to a convenient point, I will get back to them. Right. So what are you trying to measure on your site? Is it sales of a product, downloads of a PDF, maybe form fills? Maybe that's, I know we've got a couple of clients where a request for quote is what they're measuring. Is it social engagement? Is it how many people are coming through from LinkedIn, for example, and looking at your blog posts and then coming through to the website? Do you want to find out the best marketing channels? It's really useful to have a good think about what you're trying to measure, what makes a difference to you. Now, with an e-commerce site, I think it's fairly straightforward that ultimately you want to measure the number of purchases you're getting, the number of transactions, as well as the amount of turnover you're getting from that as well. And maybe, if you wanted to, the amount of transactions per customer as well. So they're fairly straightforward numbers if you've got an e-commerce site, but capturing that information gives you a vital idea of how successful the website is. And, as we'll look at later, trying to find out which sources of traffic, whether that be a Facebook post or someone coming from organic search because they've just typed something into Google, which of those sources are working best and which are giving you those the best return on your investment, whether that's cost or time to put those posts out there. So it's really important to understand what you're trying to measure, because something like Google Analytics has so much data that you're just going to get overloaded and stuck. So try and think of something in your business, a particular number. Now, I'll give you an example of an architect we work with, and for him, there's two metrics really that are important. One is the number of sign-ups to get access to additional information. So he's got a locked page which has a video, really useful video, PDF, and additional information, all to do with architecture or planning or development. Well, that is accessed by just popping in your email, and then it takes you through to the page. So that's the payment for that page, but he wants to track how many people go down that route. But then there's also, I guess it's like a request for a quote page where they can fill out some additional information because they do want to get in touch with an architect. They're ready. Maybe their build is between 6 months and a year away, and they're ready to get in touch and start working with someone. So you've got the RFQ, and then you've got his resources page. So they're two useful things to measure. And he wants to know the number of each, and then where those people come from, particularly for the resources page. So let's just run through and have a quick overview of Google Analytics. I'm going to look at the key sections. I'm going to touch on real time, but you've also got audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversion. So real time is as it sounds. It's looking at who's visiting your website in real time, like right now, pretty much. Really, it's fascinating to look at and can be particularly interesting if you send out an email and you want to see what pages people are looking at. And you may adapt the content on the time, or you may even want to adapt the server resources to make sure it doesn't fall over. But otherwise, I think it's more of a vanity metric, really, looking at how many people are looking at the site. Then we've got audience. So this is looking at the types of people that you've got to come to the site. So it could be their geography, the town they're in. In some cases, if you've got demographics enabled for advertising, then you can look at their age and gender. Then we've got acquisition. So this is where they come from, how they get there, what landing page they came onto. You've got behavior, so what they do on your site, and then conversion, ultimately, what people are landing on your contact page, filling out that RFQ form or making a purchase. So here are the key sections. This is many of you might be familiar with this already, but we've got the standard page really with the 5 key sections on the left-hand side. There are slightly more, but I will come to those later. Real-time audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. You can select, if you, like me, have multiple accounts, you can select all of those just to the right-hand side of the analytics logo. So you click on all website data. That gives you a drop-down of all the accounts you have access to. And then moving on to the other side of the page, we've got a key area, which I think is the date picker. And a lot of people forget this is here, and they just go with the standard 7 days that Google Analytics shows you. But if you click on the little drop-down arrow, this magic date picker appears, and you can select the date range that you want to look at, whether that's 1 month, or over the course of a year. Something interesting or useful tip you can do in here, if you just click on the month, so in this example, just click on May 2019, it will select just that month for you. So it's a really quick way of zipping through the calendar and just clicking on the month to get an idea of what you're doing there, to get that month up. And then we've also got a comparison of dates as well. So you can look at this month and last month, and I'll show you an example of that a bit later on. Oh, yes, we've also got a really useful feature. So obviously, if you find some interesting data and you need to report that back to someone, or you just want to take a copy for yourself, then you can use the export function. So there's a little export label at the top. Click on that, and you'll be able to download that as a PDF and a CSV. The options will depend on the report. Depending on the report, the options for download will vary, but usually you can get a PDF there. Or you can even share it out with to other people via email. Now, Felicity, you said your page looks different. Let me just waggle the presentation backwards and forwards and see now if you can see what I see, which should be, it should have a title down the bottom that says change date range. Hopefully that's working for you now. So moving on, just before we go and have a look at too many different pages, Google Analytics has a lot of terms you may not be familiar with. So I thought I'd run through a few here, just so you're up to date with the terminology. So you've got this thing called, or this name called users. Now to me, they are users, but that might lead you to think they're users of an application, but they're users of your website. I see those more as visitors. They're the number of people. And in this case, it's the number of unique people who have viewed your site. So we can see in the example here that 67 users, people, have had a look at the of your particular page. So they are unique to that website, so 67 individuals. Sessions, however, are linked to a block of time that visitor has spent on the site. So for example, if I went to visit Felicity's site, for example, twice, then that would be 2 sessions from one unique user. And obviously that's really interesting to see if you've got quite a disparity between the number of sessions that come in. So maybe you've got double the amount of sessions to users, which means people are returning back to your site and having multiple sessions within that date window. So Felicity said your page looks different. I meant my Google Analytics report page looks different. Okay. Well, that'd be interesting to know what that looks like. Perhaps get in touch with me on Hello at and show me the example of what looks different. But that screenshot was taken fairly recently. So if it looks different, I want to know what you're looking at. Okay, moving on. So we've got bounce rate. So this is effectively a single page visit. So someone has come into that page on your site and they've not looked at any other pages and they've gone off again within the session. It could mean that they've come in from a Google search, viewed the page, and then bounced back off again. But all we know is they've had a one-page view. And then for those who have stayed and viewed more pages, then we can look at the pages per session. And this can be a good number where you want people to be spending more than one page, so they're not bouncing. And you might want to increase the number of pages per session if you've got lots of information on the site or you're leading people through a step-by-step process. Again, none of these numbers are you have any right or wrongs. Maybe bounce rate, if it's over 50%, you might want to bring that down. But broadly speaking, those numbers are unique to your website. And ideally, you want, in most part, them to be going up, apart from bounce rate, which you want to be going down. So really, you want to look at these numbers on a month-by-month basis. And depending on how they relate back to your objectives and what you want to achieve, you then want to see them move up or down. Okay, so moving on, let's look at the different sections individually. And we've got how people find your site. So this is looking at the acquisition section. So for me, this is all about knowing what the best sources are for new traffic. So where new people are coming from, new visitors. For people who spend time on the site, where do they come from? Is it my Facebook post? Are they doing really well? Does that get people to come back to my blog to read a bit more, or was it LinkedIn? You know, where do I need to spend my time? And if you've got a relevant shop on there, where your money is coming from. So here's an example of the acquisition overview page. And in a snapshot for May, our date range we're looking at here, it gives us a really good idea of what's going on. And we can see the top channels. So it gives us a pie chart. We can see that direct was the top. And actually this data is based on our website Inventive People. So we can see here that the reason we've got a high amount of direct traffic is actually because we're feeding it directly. So people are coming to me for a particular service and I'm sending them a link directly to the website and where they need to go. One of our targets or objectives now is to increase the amount of organic search and really drive that for people looking for services who we don't know yet. So that's something where over time I'd like to see that green segment just expand a little bit more. And then as you can see, you've got more detail there. So you've got the number of sessions and new users for each of those different acquisition channels. And if relevant, you've got the e-commerce conversion as well. So I can see the amount of sales that we had in that particular month. Now, as I said, at the moment, this is very much led by me. So I may well be having a conversation with people and linking them through to the site and then getting a conversion that way. But over time, as we get more organic traffic, it would be really nice to see that grow. And we can look at where those conversions come from, you know, which channels are actually driving the most sales. Okay, onto this one. This is still acquisition, but we're moving into a more detailed view. Now, this is just to show, this is the view I typically like, actually. It's the one I like to dip into because it gives a really good snapshot of all the data and particularly in the numbers. And you can do easy comparisons as well. So using the date picker at the top, you can click on that, select the date range you want, and then compare it with another date range. So in this particular case, I've compared it with the previous month. So we've got April and May. We can see that May is in blue in our graph and April is in red. And then down below, we've got what looks like a very complicated table. And it's only more complicated because you can see for each different channel, we're comparing the different date ranges. So you can see across each line what the differences are. And we can see, luckily, that we're getting slightly more traffic in the current month than we were in the prior month, which is good. And that's what you want to be looking for. I mean, this is really useful if you want to compare this month, prior month, this month, and this same month last year, or this year last year. I often have it's a good comparison for this year last year. So on a dashboard that we create, using a slightly different system, but a dashboard we create, it shows you your current year and your progress as compared to the previous year, which is good if you want to always be above where you were before. So Felicity, to answer your questions, you sent me an example. I don't know if that's going to come through. We'll see if it does. But you think you've now found the page you're looking for. You didn't see the drop down. Yes. Do you mean the drop down for the date picker? Because it's tucked away, actually. The date range is just at the top. And in this case, I can't highlight it, but it just says right at the top of the page, 1st of May to the 31st of May, 2019. And there's a little arrow there. And if you click on that arrow, then the date picker appears. Okay, another view on acquisition of tree maps. Now, I don't use these a huge amount, but I thought I would show them for everyone because I think that it's an underused area. And basically what it shows you is a comparison between two numbers. And in this case, we're looking at a comparison between users and pages per session. Now, size, so the size of the square is related to the number of users. So in this case, the more users you've got, the bigger that square is going to be in relation to the other squares. And color, and you could think of the colors like a heat map. So the hotter it is or cooler it is, the higher the number. And it actually gives you an example that red is low and green is high. Now, this works better really on an e-commerce website where you might be able to compare the difference between the number of users you're getting and the amount of conversions you're getting from those users in the different channels. And so from this, we can see that relatively speaking, I think this is, I'm trying to think which site this is. This is not Inventive People because the traffic's far too high. This isn't another client of ours. But we can see that actually the display ads are giving us the highest number of pages per session, or one of the highest numbers of pages per session, but not many users, which is probably quite good because it means the display ads are being very targeted and we're just getting the people coming in who are going to be using the site. Whereas with organic search, there's a lot of people coming in, but they're probably spending less time because you've got people dipping in and out to read blog posts. But you could use this by changing the secondary metric to look at the number of conversions or the amount spent. And that gives you a better idea of the return on investment. Sorry, not even return on investment, the turnover per channel. So it's a really good one. So this is available under acquisition, all traffic, tree maps. Another one under acquisition is social. And actually the importance of this particular report is to show that social media has a contribution to a sale. Now, for example, what might happen is you might see a social post on LinkedIn, and you may click on that post and you go to the website, you read the blog article or watch the video on there, and then you move on with your day. But it might be that later on that evening or a couple of days later, you remember that product or service you saw and thought, oh, actually, that might be useful. And you may or may not remember the name. So either you go back and find it via LinkedIn, or you might just search for it on Google. If you're, depending on how well your memory works, then you're going to come up with a first page one result. You click on that and then you come through. Now, if you were just to look at the acquisition based solely on what we know now, you might assume that Google Organic was actually the contributing factor to getting that sale or getting that order or making that contact. But what this shows us is that social also may have a contributing factor as well. So let's just look at the data here. We can see that on this particular report for this day, the amount of people who came in, the total amount of conversions was 2,651. Now, of that, 249 of them had a social interaction at some point in that journey. And in fact, you can see 43 of them, that was the last interaction, which means, let's say that post was on LinkedIn, they've come straight from that post and bought at some point, but it's always going to be the last. And so what you can see from here is that a lot of people might see social media as being quite lost in the metrics and not providing a lot of direct return on investment or revenue. But actually from here, you can see that while it's not the biggest, it certainly does contribute to the amount of conversions they have, and therefore is worth doing. There is a conversion window though, so it's only going to look within a certain period of time. It's not going to be open forever. That person goes and looks at your website from a social post 1 year, and then 6 months down the line, they come back again. That's not going to be counted in this particular report, and they're going to look like a new user. Okay, so moving on. There's another aspect in terms of connecting Google Search Console. Now, I'm not going to spend too long on this because I think Google Search Console is a beast unto its own. And I think we could have a whole webinar about Search Console because there's so much in it. But what connecting Google Search Console is useful for is giving you an idea of what keywords people are typing in to get to your site. Now, this is something that used to be in Google Analytics many, many years ago, but they removed it. And then with the advent of SSL and HTTPS, it was really difficult to get any of that data, and most keywords are coming up not found or not provided. However, connecting Google Search Console, it's like your portal into Google Search, where you can see all of the keywords that people are typing in, where your result comes up on Google. So let's show you what that looks like. So here's an example. Based on one of our clients, I've removed some of the bits here, but it's got some good data. So the idea behind this is once we've connected up Google Search Console, we can look at the performance of your website. And we can look up to the last 16 months, I believe. But in this one, we're just looking over the last 3 months. And what we can see here is the total amount of impressions. Now that's, in this instance, 207,000. So we're seeing that many times the website has come up in search and has been shown on the page. People haven't necessarily clicked on it, but it has been shown on the page. So it's an impression. It's been impressed upon the page. And then from that, we've had about almost 9,000 clicks. So a very much smaller percentage of people have then clicked through onto the website. What we can also see, and we'll see it better on the next slide, is the average position as well. So it's saying that for the keywords that you type in and searches you come up on, your average position is about page 3, position 6. So position 26, but it's page 3, position 6. What you want to look at here if you do get in Search Console, is you want to look for a trend. So in this case, we can see the trend of impressions and clicks are loosely in line. You get more impressions and you get more clicks. That's how we want it to be. What we don't want to see is impressions going up, so you're being found in search, but people aren't clicking. Because ultimately, you might see the impressions come down as Google throttles back on showing you in the search results. So what you really want is them to follow each other and ideally grow, unless you're looking to sort of de-optimize for a particular keyword. Oh, I don't actually have the other slide on there. Right, well, I'll just quickly go into it. If on this particular one you were to click average position, then it would highlight your average position in the graph. But it would also show, and this is more important, it would also show in that table below, which shows all of the keywords people use. And we've got an example there, ringworm in horses. Now, if that's a keyword that they were trying to optimize for, what we would do is we can see the amount of clicks that's coming in at, how many impressions, how many times that's shown on Google results, but also the average position that comes up for in that time period. And again, we want that to be going down in this case, although on the graph it's going up, but it's still going down. We want that to be going down as close as to 1 as possible. And so that's really useful. If you're optimizing for a particular keyword, then you can keep an eye on that in Google Search Console, and it's going to give you the average position. So if you're checking that on a regular basis, or you're looking at it over the last few months, if it's going in the right direction, so down in the rankings, that's a good thing. If it's going up in the rankings, you need to do some work to optimize that page and get more of those keywords. You don't want to do that for every single keyword that's shown on here, but just the ones you're interested in. You may also find that if you click on that keyword as well, it's just going to sort of zoom into that keyword and just show you a graph of the impressions and clicks and average position for that keyword as well. So just a quick word on Google Search Console, but it's worth checking out. Okay, so what people do on your site. So once we've got them to the site, which is great, it's good to know how they got there, but also it's useful to make sure they're not wasting their time, that they're spending enough time, that they're finding what they want and they're not getting lost and going down any avenues. So perhaps we want to look at the popular pages and where they click next. So we move into the behavior section, and I've just gone straight into landing pages, as I think this is one of the, well, a pretty good report actually to understand how people come into your site and where they start. So this isn't about knowing that they've come in from LinkedIn, social media, a Google organic result. This is that they've come in on these particular pages. So in this particular instance, again, we're going back to Inventive People, that we can see the top product is, it's very small, I can't read it very well, is help you build a new website. So this is like a self-build option where we work with them to build the website. And I've actually ordered this by transactions as well. So we can see the top landing pages that actually generate transactions, cash, in other words. And so I can see that during this May period, we had a self-build website. Again, that was fed to the website by me, and that generated 1 transaction. And then underneath that, marketing support call, and that generated another transaction. So this becomes really useful. If you had lots of transactions on the site, you can order it by that, and then you can see which landing pages worked better than others. Particularly useful if you've got multiple adverts or multiple angles for your landing pages, or you're just looking at which products are working best for you and where to focus your time. So yeah, this is a really good report. That's under behavior, site content, landing pages. So we started touching on conversions. I think it's time we move to that. So a conversion in Google Analytics parlance is anything where you are achieving a goal for the website. So let's use a simple example. You want to understand how many people visit the contact page on your site. Most pages will have a contact page, so this is fairly straightforward to do. And it may just give you an idea of how much interest there is. Now, what we can't tell is if people visit the contact page, are they actually asking for a quote, or is it a customer who's just looking for your telephone number? We can't work that out. But this may give us an impression that the work you're doing is driving the right people to the contact page. So what we do in Google, I'll show you an example of that, is that we set up a goal and we say, I want to know how many people visit the contact page. And then what we can do is every time that happens, that becomes a conversion. So for every user who visits the contact page, they've converted. and that gives us a conversion ratio. So we can understand how many people who've come into the site have then converted and clicked on that contact page. This is particularly useful if you're just looking at organic traffic. You can see how many people have come in, maybe even typed a specific keyword, and then have converted. So other things you might want to look at: which sources generated sales if you've got an e-commerce site, or perhaps does Instagram deliver email signups? It can be quite useful if you're running an email and you're getting signups. You want to know where they're coming from and where to put your efforts. So let's go through this goal setup process, as it's sort of tucked away. It's something we help a lot of people with, but it's fairly straightforward to do. In this particular case, we're setting up a checkout goal for Inventive people. So what you need to do is go into admin, and that's available. You can't really see it on this particular screen, but in the menu on the left-hand side, you scroll right to the bottom and you click on admin, and it takes you into this part of this view, and you get 3 sections to it. You get the account, you get the profile, and you get the view. I'm not going to go into exactly what each one of those mean, but essentially the account is your main holding account, so rather Inventive in this case. The profile would be Inventive people, and the view would be, you can actually set up multiple different views under Inventive people. We don't ever do that. We have no need to do it, but you may want to in the future for some reason, but I would tend to, it's more of an advanced feature that we tend to leave it out. So once we're in under views, you can see the various options. You've got view settings, user management, so you can actually assign certain people to look at particular views, but also goals. So we click on goals, and then we can set up a goal. And here we are partway through setting up that goal. So we get down to the goal details. And what I want to do, and this is the particularly important bit, is you remember I wanted to track how many people were visiting the contact page. Well, let's say we wanted to know how many people were actually finishing a transaction. So they get to the checkout all the way through, they get to the thank you page. So we know payment has been taken in some form, and they've got a thank you page. So that is actually our very final page of the transaction. That's what needs to go into the destination to goal. Now, depending on what system you're using, the Inventive People site is actually built in Shopify. So they tell you what all those checkout steps are, or you can run through the checkout steps yourself and get the final page. So you put that straight into the goal destination there. But as it's an e-commerce site, we also have a funnel, because we know people come into a basket and then move through the checkout process. And there's a few steps between the basket and the final completion stage. So I want to add those in as well. So if you select funnel, turn that on, you can then go through and add the stages from the beginning. So I put in cart, which is on the page /cart. And then we've got contact, where we fill out the contact information, and then payment, where they actually put their credit card details in, or say they're going to do a BACS transfer. And then after that's completed, they go to the thank you page. To make sure that works, just click on verify this goal just before the save button, and it will give you a percentage just to make sure there's some traffic there and make sure you're looking at the correct data. If you want to get quite advanced, you can also use different what are called regular expressions under the destination area, which allows you to say, I've got one goal, but actually it hits on multiple pages. Perhaps it's you've got multiple, they're all very similar pages, but different for different landing pages, perhaps for some reason. So you can actually put multiple ones in there by separating them with what's called a pipe, but it's actually just a straight up and down line character, but it's called a pipe. So once you've got that goal, you can click save, and then you can start viewing that data. Now, importantly, depending on the view, some views need to start collecting that data from the time that you've set up the goal. Others will be able to show you the goal funnel from now. So I'll just show you that on the next screen. And those two are actually, if you look in the left-hand side, we've got conversions, funnel visualization. And funnel visualization is actually the original one, where it shows you from the top, cart, all the way through to the thank you page. It shows you different stages and how many people come in and then move through those different stages. However, they've got a new one called goal flow, which I quite like once you get over the complexity of the data. So if you go to conversions, goals, goal flow, once you set up your goal, then you'll see something like this. So you will see, in this case, the source. This is where people came from. So we've got a direct source. We'll have organic in there, email if we're using it, sending out emails, or social. And so we can see where people come from. and then whether they buy, whether they get all the way through. What I've done to make things a bit clearer, because there are lots of, you can see there's lots of lines where people will come in and move around and go back, and just looking at data for conversions where it's come in direct. But for you, you may want to look at organic, or you want to look at social. So if you were to click on it, you can say highlight this only. And what we can see here is that everyone coming in from direct, almost everyone coming in from direct, goes through to the cart. And then once they're on the cart, they go through to the contact page where they fill out their contact details. Some people drop out. So some people are not interested. They're not going to continue. And we can see that small percentage there. But say in this case, what about 25%, something like that, go through to the contact page. We can then see that a percentage of those who went to the contact page actually come back round again to the cart, and that's where they end their process. So they don't continue on anymore, which is a shame. We've lost them at that point. And it could be that there is something there that they don't understand, some information that's missing, something we need to add to reassure them that it's okay to continue going. But we do have a percentage of them go on to payment, and then on that, another small percentage go on to actually purchase, and then they drop out at the end, as you can see from the red little river that's running out at the end. And that's just saying that they haven't gone anywhere else, which makes sense. That's the end of our goal. So this is really nice. This works really well for e-commerce websites. It can work just as well if you've got one page to track. So I know Felicity, for you, as you have a smaller site, you might want to track just the contact page. So for you, if you were looking at this and you set up a goal just to look at the contact page as your goal destination, then you might, on this view, see the sources that people come in and how many people then go on to view the contact page as their conversion, their goal, as part of their visit. It doesn't really matter what other pages they look at, but they view the contact page, and then do they drop out at that point or go to other pages? Can be really useful from a monitoring point of view. So goals are definitely worthwhile using. They are also crucial if you're doing anything with online advertising, to set up goals, because if you are paying to get people to go to your website using, let's say, Google AdWords or Facebook marketing, then you really do need to have a way of knowing whether those leads were useful to you. Did they buy something from you? Did they contact you? Did they download a PDF? It's going to make it easier for you to know where to spend your money, because you can help refine your adverts to only go to the people who have got a better chance of converting. And in some cases, Google can use that information automatically for you. It can take the conversion information and feed that back into its algorithm to try and deliver it to similar audiences. So goals are very important to set up. Okay, moving on to something which is pretty cool is the model comparison tool. And this gives you, it's very similar actually to the other report, the social report we looked at. And it gives you an idea and a bit more technical detail of which conversions from which sources worked best. I think this is quite useful, really, particularly if you're doing, in this case, you're paying money to get people in on paid search. Well, you want to know how many conversions you're getting, and at what is that paid search the majority of what's called the last interaction. So are people coming straight in and buying from there, or are they coming back over a period of time, usually 30 days in this case? Are they coming back over a period of time until they convert? So this is particularly useful for people who are much heavier into marketing and putting real money in, because you need to know which sources are working and at what point they're helping you get conversions. I'm not going to dive too much into it, but it's worth having a look at, really, because it's often forgotten and overlooked. So next, we'll move on to segmenting data. So this is where you basically, Google Analytics has a load of data coming in it. It's looking at all the visitors, every single visitor that comes onto the website. But it might be that you don't just want to see which are the most popular blog posts that people are reading. You might just want to read the most popular blog posts that only people who have bought something from the site read, because that might give you a better idea about what you need to write about. It could be that you have some great blog posts and lots of people love reading them, but they're actually not the people who convert. They might be good referrers, and there may be other things to consider, but they're not people who convert. So in which case, you can use segmenting to help do that. So I've got an example here. This is how you get segmenting. Segments are usually available in pretty much most of the reports you've got available, and you find them just at the top usually it's on the opposite side of the date picker. I've got an arrow pointing to it here. If you click on that, you can select up to 4 different segments to compare. But let's go with our example, and we just want to look at what's called converters. So if you look down the list, we by default would select the segment of all users, but you can actually select converters. So we would tick that box, and you'll be able to see only the data on the website where it's people who converted. So I've done that, and we've got converters. It's a much smaller percentage because we're just looking at people who've bought on the site. And then we can actually walk through different pages on the site, and it's going to keep that segment there if possible, and show you data that is relevant to converters on the site. So we can show, just in this case, the sources of traffic which converted. So I've gone to the acquisition all traffic channels view, and we can just look at that. Or we can see which landing page they saw. So which are the top converting landing pages. Now, I was able to achieve this to some degree by ordering everything by the number of transactions those pages had, or the landing sources had. Sorry, the sources had. But this is a way of doing it, and it just removes all other data. It's just focused on your segment, whatever that segment may be. I don't think I've got an example of this because there are no blogs on the Inventive People site. But if there were, you could go into, say, site content, all pages, and then you might do a search, and you might see there's a little search box just above the main table. It's got actually the text label advanced next to it, but there's a little white box there. And if you were to type into there something like blog or news, depending on what how your pages are based, then it would filter it to only show pages with that in. And so you could go to get your segment of converters, go into behavior, site content, all pages, and filter it just to show blog posts. And then you can order it by sessions, which it should be by default anyway. And then you'll see all the popular blog posts only for the people who actually convert on your site. One important thing, and it's true in this case, there aren't many conversions here. We've got 2 different conversions. You're going to need more conversions to get significant data. It wouldn't be worth, even if we had a blog post on Inventive People, looking through to see which blog post these 2 people looked at. A, because they're direct, I've sent these people to the website to buy, but also there's just not enough of them. So you'll be making the wrong decision on just what these people look at. So do make sure if you're going to use segments that you try and get a large enough data set in there. Oh, before I go on, there's actually other, if we go back here, I don't know if we can see them. No, they're not all listed in there. But if you were to click on the left-hand side and go system, it just shows you the default segments available. And usually in there, you've got things like organic, paid, social. And so what you can do is you can see over the course of a period of time whether your social traffic is changing and going up or down, or whether organic is, and you can look at them and basically compare those segments in one line, which is quite useful. I don't use it a huge amount, but it does work quite well. It's usually the conversions I use it for. Okay, moving on. So this particular section is quite useful. It's built into Google Analytics, but you don't generate these particular URLs in Google. It just knows to recognize them. So you may have seen something when you're using, if you've used Google AdWords before, when that data, when you're looking at the page data in Google Analytics, you can see campaigns, and you can click on a campaign, and then you'll see your Google ad campaigns coming through, and you'll be able to say, oh, I can see which Google ad campaign drove which amount of traffic coming through. Well, that is in part driven by these campaign URLs. So as in Google AdWords, you would put your URL in. So when someone clicks on an advert and they go through to your website, they go through to the right page. But Google will add some additional code on to tell analytics what that campaign was, and any other different data, like what keyword people use to find, to come up with that advert, and other data, like what the ad variant was, what the text in the advert was, and that sort of thing. But you can do that yourself. So if you've got an Instagram campaign, or actually not an Instagram campaign, let's go with a LinkedIn campaign. And so you want to run a series of posts, and you want to see how effective that is at bringing that traffic back into your site, and which posts work, or maybe even which adverts work. You can use a campaign generator to put additional information into the URL that links people back to the website. It'll become a bit clearer in a minute. And then that additional information is going to help you understand not only that you're getting perhaps conversions from LinkedIn, but which adverts or which posts were working the best. So let's have a look. So this is the campaign URL builder. I think if you just search for campaign URL builder, it comes up, but I've got the link at the bottom for you. And what it helps you do is just add on this additional code. I've got an example here from Hogue 100. So what you do is you put in the URL you want to link to. So in this particular case, it's hogue100.co.uk/academies/home.html. That's the full URL as you'd see it in your browser. So you pop that in. And that would be the link you'd normally use in your LinkedIn post. So next underneath that, we've got campaign source and campaign medium. So these are two important ones really to give you a good idea of where it's coming from. So the campaign medium, it's got some examples there like CPC, which is cost per click or paid advertising. You've got banner advertising or email. So in this case, we want to align this with sending out emails. In this particular example, they were sending out manual emails to people. So it wasn't coming from an email program like MailChimp or Campaign Monitor, but I still wanted to come under that same banner. So the campaign medium is email and the campaign source is Outlook. It could be, I think Campaign Monitor will put something like email software. You could have MailChimp in there. That doesn't matter so much to me, so you don't need to worry too much. But campaign source, in this case, Outlook, because that's what they were using to send it. And then the most important one, the campaign name. So if you were running a coordinated campaign, maybe you had some emails going out, Google Ads, Facebook posts, and so on, you might want them all to have the same name, but then have different mediums and different sources. So when you see it in Google, you can see this, how well this campaign performed, and then you can click on that and then drill down into the different methods that people arrive on the site. So it allows you to get a lot more granular than you can just by looking at the acquisition data. You can have other things in here, but you may or may not want to do them. I know for adverts that having campaign content can be quite useful. So that if you've got multiple adverts, you might have a short name for each bit of text advert that goes under that campaign, but I tend to leave those. What you can't see very well because I've stuck the text over the top of it, but it's got this share the generated campaign URL, and it's basically squashed all of those bits of data together. So you can then copy and paste that into your post in LinkedIn or your advert on Facebook. And then when it comes through to your website, it's going to be all encoded in there, and you'll have this additional information. It's used by lots of people. It's totally normal to do. Often a lot of systems might add it in for you. I know Buffer, which is the system we use for posting out social links, will add that additional information in as well, so we can see it's gone through Buffer. But other than that, yeah, it's very useful. It's certainly worth, if you are setting up multiple campaigns and it's important to you because you've taken a lot of time over it, or there's a cost that you know it's come from there, you know it's working, you definitely want to be using the campaign URL builder. Here's a little example of how it might look in analytics. If you go to acquisition, campaigns, all campaigns, then you can see all the list of campaigns down our left here, which comes from campaign name. And then again, the same sort of set of data, users, new users, bounce rates, transactions for e-commerce in this case. But what you can also see, if you just look just above the table, we can actually move along and look at the source, medium, or if we wanted to in that particular, I don't know which would be relevant. If we were to click on, say, May 2019 newsletter, if it had multiple sources, we'd be able to see those on the next page. But in this case, I think most of these are newsletters. So yes, really useful. As we're coming to the end, I want to look at setting up a dashboard report. The reason for this is, A, you don't want to have to keep logging into Google Analytics all the time. It's a bit of a pain. But also, you might forget. And so having a dashboard set up is not only a quick way to get the data that you need, so we're coming back round to thinking about what data you actually need to collect, but also having a prompt, a nudge to get that data in front of you without you having to think about it, and maybe prompting you to ask some questions. And if need be, you can then dive into Google Analytics afterwards. So here's an example of a marketing dashboard you can get into Google Analytics. Now, I will just add, before we go on further, I think these are really good, but it seems that they've made it a bit more awkward or downplayed it over a period of time because of a new system they've got called Data Studio, which is great. And I will show you an example of that in a minute, but it's much more complex than this. So just bear in mind that at some point they may stop using the dashboards, but really they're still working well now. So it's certainly worth using them if you're going to find it useful. So to get access to these, if you look in the left-hand menu, you've got customization, dashboards. Click on that. And then if you don't have any dashboards there, you get to make a dashboard. And I recommend to start with a template they've already made rather than starting fresh and clean. And I've made a very simple marketing dashboard here, which is useful. I don't actually use this one on an ongoing basis, but it's useful as an example to show people. And again, it works for the same date period, so whatever date range we've got at the top there. So we can select the number, we can see the number of visitors. We can just have a box. We can click on Add Widget, and we want to say, I just want to see the number of visitors in this particular graph type. So I can see whether it's going up or down. We've also, at the trend, we've also got some numbers, some metrics. How's our bounce rate? Oh, it's 60% here. So that's not too bad actually for Inventive people, because I know it's mostly direct and I'm sending people there to buy. So in that case, that's fine. And then looking down, we've got the top 10 best converting sources. So again, this is just, rather than having all of those tables of information, we've just got one table with our sources, users, and conversion rate, which is good. And then slightly lower down, you can add things like locations, the type of browser people are using, whether it's mobile or desktop. Now let me click into one of those and show you what it looks like. So this is the one for the best converting sources. And so when you're adding a widget, it's going to come up very similar to this. You'll add a widget, you'll select how you want it to look. Is it just a number? Is it a map, a pie chart, or a table? You click on those, and then you select, depending on what you want to look at, you can select different information. So I've said I want to look at the default channel grouping, which is organic search, social, email, referral. So it's the sort of standard types of sources coming in. And then I want to look at numbers for users and goal conversion rate. And also actually, I want it to order by users. And if I really wanted to, I could filter that even further. And then you save it, and then you'll see the widget on there, and you can even drag them around and get them exactly looking how you want. I don't know if I've got, no, I haven't got it on here. If you want that sent to you, which is the ideal thing to do once you've set up this dashboard, rather than keep going into analytics to look at it, what you can do is you can go up to the share menu. So just under the title, in fact, we click on email, and in there, we can select that we want to email it monthly, and we want a PDF. And then I think you just select the day of the month, put in your email address, and then every month for us, we use the first day of the month, you're going to get an email PDF of that dashboard. One, it's good to have that as a little keepsake. So you've got your monthly dashboard saved to your email every single month. But also having a way of having that nudge really to go and look at the data and just make sure that numbers are going in the right direction. And if there are any anomalies, it gives you a bit of a heads up rather than looking at every 6 months. So setting up a dashboard is a really good idea. It's not that complicated, really. You just click Add Widget, up this comes, and depending on if you've got the default template set up, you can then just make a few changes. So the other thing I did touch on a little bit is called Data Studio. And I know a lot of our coaching customers, we've set one of these up for them already. Data Studio is really good. Data Studio is a way of pulling together not just Google Analytics data, but lots of different data from different sources in exactly the way you want it. So this is just a simple view of something I call the GA Analyzer with our happy robot there. And what this allows us to do, let's say we want to start working with a new client. If we can just get access to their Google Analytics, I can select that at the top using the little drop-down box where it says click to select your data, select their analytics profile, and then I can view all of the important information that I need at a glance rather than having to dig through Google Analytics, just taking a bit more of my time, so I can see, this is actually just using default data that Google supplies, but I can see how many visitors they've got. I can look at, everything is based on the last year. So I can see how many goals they got, what other visits going up or down. In channel performance, this is quite a nice view. It looks a bit manic, but it does give me an idea of where their traffic is coming from and is that changing over time. We've got most active days, what type of devices, campaigns, and so on. So it's a really good snapshot. But the nice thing about this is you can have multiple pages. So for a lot of our customers, coaching customers, we set up multiple pages that not only have a dashboard at the front to show you a summary of information, but also allow you to drill into that information and looking at things like YouTube stats, pulling Search Console information so we can see which keywords are performing well, through to even in some cases we're experimenting pulling in external data from CRM systems, from contact management systems, where you can get an understanding for the number of quotes coming through and what average transaction values you've got and so on. So this is a really good tool for pulling in lots of data, but it's complicated. And if you haven't got a handle on Google Analytics, you're going to find this tough. However, for larger businesses, it's really, really useful. Okay, so we're coming to the end. What I'd like to do, and this is a new section, but actually something I do a lot in workshops, is I ask people to commit to an action. And if you're on the next one, follow that up. But even if you're not, it's always a good process when you've learned something to just maybe pick one of those items and try and commit to doing it, even if it's just investigating whether it's going to be useful to you. So I'll leave you with that thought, but perhaps just if you do have a few things that I've jogged your memory on or you feel you're going to do over the next 30 days, just pop it in the comments. I'd like to see what you're going to be up to this month. We've also got Q&A. Just let me know if there's any questions, anything you want to ask. I've got just a few minutes left for that. And then we're going to pick the next topic. So are there any things that people feel they're going to touch on? Or is it all too much and you just want to go and lie down, maybe have a nice cold glass of water? Okay, you're all silent, so you must be out in the sun. I will, let's pick the next topic. In fact, if I put up the topic for next month here, you can have a look and pick it. Nikki, yes, you said, I'm going to watch this video again with Karen and get an action plan together. Yes, okay, so tell me what it is when we meet, and you can tell me what the important bits were out of it. Felicity, I'm going to try and set up a goal to track people looking at the contact page. I think it's worthwhile, and even if that isn't the right place to track, it's good to start there, because once you've started by tracking something, you know whether it's the right place or not, or whether it's useful information for you. So the next topic, I've put a little poll up. I don't know who's answered yet, but we've got image editing. So, and that's not just some basic image editing. We're going to go through as much as possible and show you different ways of treating and processing images, maybe even quite interactive. I don't know. It's a bit of a wild card, that one. WordPress walkthrough. So that's going to be much more like this. I'll have a much more formulaic process, and we're going to go through all the different areas of WordPress. Content development. I've actually got a great presentation looking at blogging and developing a content strategy, or Google Ads, or something else. So we've got one answer. I don't know who else who has filled that out, but I'm going to go with image sourcing and we're going with image sourcing and editing. Great. Okay, so we've got I think we'll have quite a nice time next month. I think that would be a good one, actually. I've been waiting to do that. Great. Okay. Thanks, Nikki. So if anyone who's listening, I know people who are part of this live are club members, but for anyone who's listening after the fact, if you're not a club member, it's £250 for 12 months. If you want a taster, then let me know, get in touch, and I can talk you through it. But at the end of the day, it's £250. If you are not happy after you've paid that, within 30 days, let me know, and I'll refund you the full amount. As well as getting access to these webinars. We haven't quite got it set up yet, but soon we will have the full archive and backlog of every presentation that we've got, so you can dip back into those whenever you want. And whenever you become a member, you get access to that full archive. Also, you will be able to get access to a 1-hour session with me as a way of kickstarting your marketing. So it's a way of maybe taking some of the actions forward you've learned in one of the club sessions, or just focusing on something else. So you'll get one of those free as well to kickstart your marketing. Thank you very much. One thing that's important to note is that I'm away in the latter part of August, so I need to move the club session. I hope that's okay with everyone. So I'm proposing to move it to the 13th of August due to holidays. I appreciate other people will be on holidays, that's fine. Even if I'm here doing it on my own because everyone else is on holiday, that's fine. I know you can listen to it later. But yeah, so the next club session is going to be on the 13th of August due to our holidays. But otherwise, I wish you all have a lovely time. If I don't see you then, I'll see you back on the in September, in the last Tuesday of the month. Brilliant. Nikki, yeah, thanks. Look forward to seeing you. And Felicity, I look forward to seeing you at the next WEN event when I can make that. yes, should be able to. Actually, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to make that next month, but I will try. Look forward to seeing you both. And for anyone who's just watching on the sidelines or is going to watch later, thank you very much, and have a great summer. Goodbye, everyone.